I never thought a stranger's smile could feel like a ghost. But that's what it was. The first time I saw him standing at the counter, the rain still dripping from his coat, his eyes scanning the menu like he didn't know what he wanted. It wasn't just that he looked familiar. It was that my heart remembered him before my mind did. The cafe was half empty that morning. Just the quiet hum of the espresso machine and the smell of cinnamon. My twins, Leo and Luca, were at the corner table, fighting over a cookie bigger than their faces. I was wiping the counter, pretending not to hear them, when the bell over the door chimed. He stepped inside. Tall, sharp jaw, dark hair that curled a little when wet. The kind of man you look at once and then again, because your brain doesn't believe the first time. And in that split second, my chest hurt. Like the ache of a song I'd sworn I'd forgotten. He ordered a black coffee. His voice was calm, low, too steady for a morning like that. And when I looked up to meet his eyes, I felt my breath catch. For a moment, I thought I saw him. The man I lost 3 years ago. The man who never got to see our twins take their first steps. Of course, that was impossible. The man I loved, Noah, was gone. Still, this stranger had the same warmth behind his eyes. The same way of pausing before he spoke, as if words carried weight. "Here's your coffee," I said, sliding the cup toward him. My hands trembled just slightly. "Thanks." He smiled, a polite, fleeting thing. But then his gaze flicked toward the corner, where the twins were whispering about who got the last bite of cookie. "Your kids?" I nodded. "Yeah, twins. They look happy." I almost laughed at that. "Most of the time." He nodded again, and for a moment, silence stretched between us, the kind that hums with something you can't name. Then Luca, my bold one, slid off his chair and walked up to the counter, crumbs on his cheek and mischief in his eyes. He tugged at my apron. "Daddy, can I have?" But he stopped. His gaze lifted to the man in front of me. The man looked down at him, smiling softly. "Hey there." And before I could blink, Luca asked, with the blunt honesty only a 4-year-old could manage, "Are you going to be our dad?" The world stopped. The air, the noise, even my heartbeat. The man blinked, startled. Then his expression softened, almost painfully. "Oh, I don't think so, buddy." Leo ran over, tugging at his brother. "Luca, you can't just ask that." But Luca ignored him. He pointed at the man's face, his little voice serious. "You look like him." I froze. "Like who?" the man asked, glancing between us. Luca looked up at me, then back at him. "Like the picture in Daddy's book." My throat closed. He meant the photo album, the one I kept hidden in my closet, where old memories lived. I crouched down fast, forcing a smile. "Luca, that's enough, okay? Go back to your brother." But the man was watching me. Not suspicious, just curious. Like he'd walked into a story and couldn't find his way out. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "Kids say strange things sometimes." He nodded, though his gaze lingered. "It's fine. He just surprised me." I forced a laugh. He surprises everyone. He smiled, that quiet, polite curve of his lips, and carried his coffee to a corner seat. But I could still feel his presence like static in the air. For the rest of the morning, I couldn't stop glancing over. He sat with a laptop open, typing, but every now and then his eyes drifted toward the twins. Watching them giggle. Watching me. Something about him tugged at old places inside me. Places I'd boarded up years ago. When Noah died, I promised myself I'd never let anyone close again. Love had cost too much. It had taken too much. But that man's face, the way he listened to the kids when they laughed too loud, the way he smiled when Lucas spilled milk and tried to hide it, it all felt familiar. Like a memory I couldn't quite place. At lunchtime, the twins insisted on sharing their sandwiches with him. He tried to refuse, but Leo had already pushed half his peanut butter toast across the table. "Eat, mister," Leo said seriously. "Daddy says food is love." The man laughed. "He's right." And then, somehow, we were all sitting together. Me, the twins, and the stranger. "Elias," he said when I finally asked his name. "I'm Elias." "Nice to meet you," I replied. "I'm Micah." "Elias." The name fit him. Quiet. Solid. Something you could lean on. He told me he'd just moved into town for work. Said he didn't know many people yet. And before I could stop myself, I said, "Well, you know us now." He smiled at that. A real one this time, wide and unguarded. It made my chest ache. That afternoon, after Elias left, the cafe felt emptier. The twins kept asking about him. "Will he come back, Daddy?" I liked him. "He eats toast funny." I laughed it off, but inside something twisted. I told myself it didn't matter. He was just a customer, someone passing through. But deep down, I hoped he'd come back. And he did. 2 days later, the bell rang again. I looked up from the espresso machine, and there he was. Same calm eyes. Same quiet smile. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I managed. He came every day that week. Always the same order. Black coffee, no sugar. Always sitting in the same corner, sometimes typing, sometimes just watching. The twins grew bolder, dragging their crayons over to his table. He helped them draw dinosaurs, folded paper airplanes, listened when they told stories that made no sense. I watched them together, a lump forming in my throat. He was good with them. Too good. And every time he looked at me, my heart betrayed me, beating a little faster, daring to hope for something I'd sworn I didn't need. One evening, after closing, I found him waiting outside in the drizzle. "Sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to scare you. I was just walking by." "It's fine," I said. "You walk by a lot lately." He smiled, shy this time. Maybe I liked the company. The streetlight flickered above us, casting soft shadows across his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air smelled like rain and roasted coffee. Then he said, almost too quietly, "You looked sad today." I froze. "What?" "In the cafe," he said. "When you thought no one was looking. You looked tired. Like you're carrying too much." I didn't know what to say. No one had noticed that before. Not even the people closest to me. I forced a small laugh. Parenthood does that. But he just looked at me, eyes deep and kind. "I don't think that's all it is." Something in his voice broke through me, gentle, but sharp enough to hurt. Before I could answer, Luca's small voice echoed from the upstairs window of our apartment above the cafe. "Daddy." Leo took my blanket. I looked up and sighed. Story of my life. When I looked back down, Elias was smiling again. "Go," he said softly. "They need you." But as I turned to leave, he added, almost under his breath, "You deserve someone to take care of you too, Micah." The way he said my name, slow, careful, made me stop. I looked at him, and for one dizzy second, I wanted to reach out, to tell him everything. But I didn't. I just nodded and went inside, my heart thudding too loud. That night, after the twins finally fell asleep, I sat by the window, staring at the street below. Elias had already gone, but I could still feel him there, like the echo of something that hadn't happened yet. And when I looked at the photo frame on my shelf, Noah's smile frozen in time, I whispered, "I don't know what to do if he stays." Because part of me already wanted him to, and part of me was terrified. The next morning, Elias didn't come. Or the day after that. The cafe felt quieter, emptier. The twins noticed first. "Where's Mr. Coffee Man?" Luca asked. "He probably has work," I said, trying to sound casual. But every time the bell over the door chimed, I looked up too fast. Every time it wasn't him. Until Friday. When the bell rang, and I looked up, there he was. Only this time, he wasn't smiling. His eyes were red, tired. He looked like someone who'd been running from something. "Hey," I said softly. "You okay?" He hesitated. "Can we talk?" "Outside." My stomach tightened. "Yeah, sure." I told the twins to stay inside and stepped out into the sunlight with him. He shoved his hands into his pockets. "This is going to sound insane, but do you believe in coincidences?" I blinked. "Sometimes." He exhaled slowly, eyes flicking toward the cafe window, toward my twins, their faces pressed to the glass. "They remind me of someone," he said quietly. "Someone I lost a long time ago." My heart dropped. I didn't speak. I couldn't. He looked at me then, straight through me. And with a voice that trembled just slightly, he said, "Micah, you remind me of him too." The world tilted. Because suddenly I saw it. Not the face of a stranger, but the echo of the man I'd loved. Not the same, but too close to ignore. Elias swallowed hard. His name was Noah. I froze. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the pavement. He stared at me, confused by my reaction. "You knew him?" I tried to breathe, but my chest wouldn't move. The twins were still watching from inside. Luca waved. Leo grinned. I whispered, barely audible. "He was my husband." Elias's eyes widened, shock, recognition, disbelief. And then, softly, he said the words that made the world go still. "He was my brother." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The sound of the coffee cup shattering on the pavement echoed between us like a gunshot. Elias's voice broke the silence first. "Your husband." I nodded, my throat dry. "Noah." His name was Noah. Elias blinked hard, as if trying to make sense of it. You and him. Yes. The word fell out before I could stop it. He took a step back, his face pale. I didn't know. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled in my chest. Because looking at him felt like standing in front of a mirror reflecting a past I wasn't ready to face. He looked so much like Noah. Not the same, but close enough to hurt. We stood there on the sidewalk, the air thick between us. Finally, he whispered. He never told me he got married. My eyes stung. We didn't have time. He looked up at me then, eyes full of questions. What happened to him? The question I'd been running from for 3 years. I swallowed hard. A car accident. Late at night. He was driving home from work. I paused, forcing the next words out. He didn't make it. Elias exhaled, his voice barely a breath. I thought he just left. I frowned. What do you mean? He looked down, his jaw tight. Our family, we lost touch. He disappeared after we argued. I didn't even know he was. He stopped, his voice cracking. I should have looked for him. Something inside me softened then. The anger I didn't realize I still carried shifted into something else. Grief shared, not owned. It's not your fault, I said quietly. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He just wanted a fresh start. Elias nodded slowly, eyes glassy. He found you. I smiled faintly, bitterly. Yeah, he found me. For a moment, we just stood there, both lost in the same ghost. Then, from inside the cafe, Luca's voice cut through the heaviness. Daddy, we're hungry. I turned toward the window. 2 little faces pressed against the glass, waving like the world wasn't breaking outside. Elias followed my gaze. They're his. I nodded. Yeah, Leo and Luca. He smiled, a small, aching smile. They have his smile. I swallowed hard. And his stubbornness. Elias's voice softened. Can I meet them properly? Something in me hesitated. It felt dangerous. Like opening a door I'd promised myself would stay locked forever. But looking at him, the grief, the sincerity, I couldn't say no. Yeah, I said quietly. Come inside. The twins were thrilled to see him again. Leo shouted, Mr. Coffee Man, while Luca practically climbed into his arms. Elias laughed, a sound I hadn't realized I missed until that moment. He crouched down to their level. Hey, you two. I hear you like dinosaurs. Both nodded eagerly, words tumbling over each other. Within minutes, the cafe was full of laughter and chaos again. Paper planes, cookie crumbs, and twin voices filling every corner. I watched from behind the counter, arms crossed, heart tight. It felt wrong and right at the same time, like something I'd dreamed about and wasn't supposed to. He looked at them with so much care. Not pity, not distance, just warmth. And for the first time in years, I let myself imagine what it might be like to have someone else here. When the twins finally grew tired and dozed off in their corner, I poured 2 coffees and sat across from Elias. He looked at me carefully. So, you never told them? I shook my head. They were barely a year old when Noah died. I'll tell them when they're older. Right now, I just want them to be happy. He nodded, his hands wrapped around his mug. That's fair. We sat in silence for a while, both staring at the twins. Then he said quietly, Do they know about me? I frowned. You. He hesitated. About Noah's family. Our family. I shook my head. I didn't even know he had a brother. His lips parted in surprise. He never mentioned me? No. He leaned back, letting out a slow breath. That sounds like him. There was something heavy in his tone, guilt, regret, maybe both. What happened between you two? I asked gently. Elias's eyes lowered. It was stupid. I said things I didn't mean. He left before I could fix it. Then I got busy and I figured he'd come back when he was ready. He laughed once, sharp and hollow. He never did. I didn't know what to say. So I just reached across the table and touched his hand. He looked up, startled. Some good came out of it, I said softly, glancing at the twins. He followed my gaze, and his expression melted. Yeah, I see that. From that day, Elias became part of our routine. He'd stop by the cafe in the mornings, sometimes staying to help with the rush. The twins adored him, followed him around like ducklings. He'd lift them onto the counter, teach them how to pour milk into the cups, read them stories between customers. And me? I tried to pretend I wasn't falling into something again. But every time he smiled, every time his hand brushed mine by accident, my heart betrayed me. Still, I told myself it wasn't love. It couldn't be. It was just familiarity. Comfort. grief tangled with kindness. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. One rainy afternoon, when the twins were at daycare and the cafe was empty, Elias came by earlier than usual. He leaned against the doorframe, raindrops glistening in his hair. "You okay?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "I should be asking you that." He walked closer, his shoes squeaking on the wet floor. "You look like you haven't slept." I shrugged. "Single parenthood. Comes with the job." He hesitated, then said quietly, "You don't have to do it alone, you know." I froze. "What do you mean?" He rubbed the back of his neck, awkward but earnest. "I mean, I could help. With them. With the cafe. Whatever you need." I looked at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "You don't owe us anything, Elias." "I know." His eyes met mine. "That's not why I want to." The room went still. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the windows. I tried to speak, but my throat closed up. Because part of me wanted to say yes. Part of me wanted to let him in, to stop pretending I was fine. But another part whispered that letting him close would destroy me all over again. I took a step back, shaking my head. "I can't." He frowned. "Why not?" "Because you look at me like he did." The words came out sharper than I meant. He blinked. "Micah." I cut him off. "And when you smile, I see him. When you talk to the kids, I see him. I can't keep doing this." His voice was soft, breaking a little. "I'm not trying to replace him." "I know," I whispered. "But my heart doesn't." For a moment, I thought he'd argue. But instead, he nodded slowly, pain flickering across his face. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll give you space." He turned to leave, but before he reached the door, I said, "Elias." He looked back. "You have his eyes," I said softly. "But you're not him. And maybe that's what scares me the most." He stood there for a heartbeat longer, rain dripping from his hair, then whispered, "Maybe that's what could save you too." And then he was gone. That night, the twins couldn't sleep. They kept asking for him. "Where's Elias? When's he coming back? Did we do something bad?" I told them no, that he was just busy. But Leo looked at me, his small voice trembling. "You're sad again, Daddy." I smiled weakly. "I'm fine, sweetheart." But I wasn't. After they finally drifted off, I sat on the couch, the rain still whispering outside. I opened the photo album, the one Luca had mentioned that first day, and stared at Noah's face. His eyes. His smile. The same, yet not. I whispered into the quiet, "Your brother found me, Noah. What am I supposed to do with that?" No answer came. Only the soft hum of the storm. Days passed. Elias didn't come by. The twins stopped asking, though I could tell they missed him. And I missed him too, more than I wanted to admit. But I tried to move on. Routine was easier than heartbreak. Until one morning, I found an envelope slipped under the cafe door. No name. No return address. Just my name, written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a small photo. 2 boys, maybe 12 or 13, standing in front of a lake, grinning at the camera. Noah and Elias. On the back, a single line. "He wanted to come home. I think he meant you." My hands trembled as I read it. I didn't know what it meant, not really. But it felt like a door opening again, one I thought I'd locked for good. That evening, as I was closing the cafe, the bell rang. I looked up, expecting a late customer. But it was him. Elias stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, eyes searching mine. Before I could speak, he said, "I need to tell you something. About Noah. About that night." My heart stopped. "What night?" He took a step closer, voice trembling. "The night he died. I was there. When he said those words, I was there that night. I forgot how to breathe." Rain was still dripping from his hair, forming small puddles on the cafe floor. The bell above the door had stopped ringing, but its echo was still in my chest. I whispered, "What do you mean you were there?" Elias looked exhausted, like someone who'd been carrying a secret for too long. "Can we sit?" he asked quietly. I nodded and led him to the corner table. The same one where he'd first shared toast with my twins, where laughter used to fill the air. Tonight it felt like a courtroom. He rubbed his hands together before speaking. I was supposed to meet him that night. Noah. We hadn't talked in years, but he called me out of nowhere. He said he wanted to fix things. His voice cracked. He asked me to drive out and meet him at the lake. I was late. He swallowed. I saw his car lights through the trees. And then they were gone. The words fell like stones between us. I felt cold all over. "You saw the crash?" He nodded once. "By the time I reached him, it was It was already too late. He covered his face with his hands. I never told anyone. I couldn't. The guilt, it ate me alive. I thought if I stayed away, if I built a life somewhere else, maybe I could forget. He looked up at me, eyes red. But then I walked into your cafe, and it was like he was standing there again. The twins, everything I'd been avoiding was suddenly real. For a long time, I didn't move. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to reach across the table and hold him until the trembling stopped. Finally, I said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" His answer was barely a whisper. "Because I thought you'd hate me." I stood and turned toward the window. The street outside was slick with rain, reflecting the cafe lights like a broken mirror. "I don't hate you," I said. "I just don't know what to do with this." Behind me, his chair scraped softly. "I don't expect forgiveness." I closed my eyes. "That's not what this is about. You were the last person to see him alive. I spent 3 years wondering if he was scared, if he was alone. And now you're here telling me you were there." I turned to face him. "Were you with him when he—" Elias's voice was fragile. "Yes." I felt my knees give out and sank into the opposite chair. He continued. "He said your name, Micah. Over and over. He was trying to call you, but his phone was gone." I held his hand. "I told him you loved him." He smiled. My vision blurred. He smiled. Elias nodded. He said, "Tell Micah I'm sorry I left angry." Then he was gone. Silence swallowed the room. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the rain outside. I pressed a hand against my mouth, choking back a sob I didn't want him to see. When I could finally speak, I whispered, "Thank you. For being there." He shook his head. "You shouldn't thank me. I've carried this for so long, and I couldn't stand knowing you didn't have the truth." I looked at him then, really looked. The resemblance to Noah was still there, but now I saw the differences too. The quiet steadiness, the lines around his eyes from holding pain too long. "You did what you could," I said softly. He gave a small, broken laugh. "He used to say you were the strong one. That undid me completely." The twins' footsteps interrupted us. I hadn't heard them wake up, but there they were. Leo rubbing his eyes, Luca clutching a stuffed dinosaur. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Leo asked, sleepy and worried. I wiped my face quickly. "It's okay, baby. I'm okay." Elias knelt down so they could see him. "Hey, you two. It's late, huh?" Luca blinked up at him. "Did you make Daddy sad?" Elias smiled sadly. "No. I think maybe I helped him remember something." Leo studied him for a long moment. "You look like the man in the photo," he said quietly. Elias glanced at me. I nodded. "That's because he's Noah's brother." The boys looked at each other in awe, then back at Elias. "That means you're our uncle?" Elias hesitated. "If you want me to be." Luca grinned. "Uncle Eli." He threw his little arms around him. Leo joined in. Watching them, something inside me shifted. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for years loosened just a little. After I put the twins back to bed, I found Elias still sitting at the table, staring at the photo album I'd left open. He looked up when I came over. "They're incredible kids, Micah." "They saved me," I said simply. He closed the album gently. "You saved yourself." We sat there for a while, saying nothing. The storm had eased into a soft drizzle. Then he said, "I'm leaving town tomorrow." The words hit harder than I expected. "Why?" He gave a small shrug. "Maybe I've done enough damage. You deserve peace, not constant reminders." I shook my head. "You think leaving will fix anything?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes letting go is the only way to say sorry." I walked him to the door. The street smelled like wet asphalt and coffee grounds. He turned to me. "Thank you for listening. I didn't think I deserved that." "You didn't have to carry it alone," I said. "You still don't." For a second, I thought he might reach for me. Instead, he just said, "Take care of them. They're all that's left of him." "And you," I whispered. He looked startled. "You're what's left of him too," I said. "Maybe that's why you're here." He gave a shaky breath. "If I stay, could you ever?" He stopped himself, shaking his head. "Never mind." I stepped closer, close enough to see the raindrops on his lashes. "Elias," I said, "don't run from the things that could heal you." He held my gaze, searching for something. "And you? Will you let yourself heal?" I didn't answer. I just opened the door. The cold air rushed in. He stepped out onto the street, but before walking away, he turned back once more. "You asked what he meant by coming home," he said. "Maybe he meant both of us." And then he disappeared into the rain. For hours I sat by the window, waiting for dawn. When the first light touched the street, I looked down and saw something glinting near the doorway. A small silver keychain, shaped like a compass. I picked it up and recognized the engraving immediately. Find your way home. It had been Noah's once. My chest ached, but this time the pain was softer. Maybe Elias had come here to finish what his brother started. Maybe home wasn't a place. Maybe it was the people who stayed after everything fell apart. Weeks passed. The cafe grew busier again. The twins laughed louder. Life found its rhythm. But some mornings, when I brewed the first cup of coffee, I'd look toward the door, half expecting the bell to chime. Sometimes it did. And one gray morning in early spring, it did again. The twins were coloring by the window when the bell rang. I turned and froze. Elias stood there, a small suitcase beside him, eyes nervous but smiling. "Morning," he said softly. "I heard you're hiring." Leo squealed. "Uncle Eli." Luca ran to him, wrapping his arms around his legs. I just stared, heart pounding. "You came back," I whispered. He nodded. "Yeah, guess I finally found my way home." The twins pulled him toward their table, shouting about dinosaurs and cookies. Elias laughed, kneeling down to join them. And as I watched him, I realized something. This wasn't about replacing Noah. It was about what came after loss. The kind of love that doesn't erase the past but learns to live beside it. I walked over, poured him a cup of coffee, and set it in front of him. He looked up, smiling that quiet smile that once felt like a ghost, but now felt alive. "Still black, no sugar?" I asked. He nodded. "You remembered." "Some things," I said, "are worth remembering." Outside, the rain started again, gentle this time, almost like a blessing. But as he reached for the cup, something slipped from his pocket. A folded letter, edges worn. My name written across it. He froze. "That's—" I picked it up, my fingers trembling. "What is this?" He swallowed hard. "It's from Noah. He wrote it the night he died. I couldn't read it before. I think it's time you did." My heart stopped. I stared at the envelope, the familiar handwriting. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then I whispered, "What if I'm not ready?" Elias's voice was gentle. "Then I'll read it with you." I looked up into his eyes, Noah's eyes, but somehow different, and nodded. Together, we sat down at the corner table. The twins' laughter filled the background. The letter trembled in my hands. And as I unfolded it, my world shifted once more.